far beyond the quiet blue light of Earth, in a region of space where stars looked thin and distant, there existed a world built on perfect order. The cities of that world were smooth and silver, rising like calm waves frozen in time. Nothing there was left to chance. Every life was measured, every future was planned. Every being knew their purpose from the moment they first opened their eyes. On that world lived a woman named Elira. She was gentle in a way her people did not value. Her voice was soft, her movements careful, and her thoughts often turned toward small, beautiful things that others ignored, like the color of the sky at evening or the quiet sound of wind against the crystal towers. These were not useful thoughts. Usefulness was everything. And Irila had been judged useless. For many cycles, the healers and scholars had studied her. They had tested her body, scanned her blood, and measured the silent rhythms of her cells. Each result had returned the same cold answer. She could not create life. She would never carry a child. She would never continue the perfect line her people believed must never end. Among her species, this was not simply sadness. It was failure. It was emptiness. It was a break in the sacred chain of survival. The law was ancient and unchanging. Those who could not give life must not consume the world's future. They were released beyond the protective barrier of the cities, into the open wild where storms of radiation moved like invisible oceans. No one survived there for long. The law called it balance. No one called it mercy. On the final day before her exile, Elira stood alone in a quiet chamber of white stone. The walls glowed softly, giving no shadows. She had no family beside her. Her parents had already withdrawn their bond in silent obedience to tradition. Friends had stopped speaking to her long before the judgment was complete. Isolation was part of the sentence. She felt no anger, only a deep, slow sadness, like sinking into cold water that had no bottom. A single attendant entered the chamber. The figure's face was calm and unreadable, trained to show nothing. In careful, formal words, the attendant informed her that transport would begin at the next light cycle. Elira bowed her head to show acceptance. Resistance would change nothing. Nothing ever changed. When the attendant left, the silence returned. It felt heavier than before. Elira looked once more at the glowing walls, trying to memorize the simple fact of being alive inside safety. Soon even that memory would fade in the burning winds beyond the barrier. She did not cry. Her people had trained tears out of themselves generations ago. When the transport vessel came, it was small and gray, built only for duty. 2 guardians guided her inside. They did not touch her. Physical comfort was not permitted in moments of correction. The door closed with a soft sound that felt final. The vessel rose smoothly into the pale sky. Through the narrow window, Elira watched the silver city grow smaller. Towers that once felt endless now looked fragile, like thin glass shapes that could shatter with a single strike. She wondered, not for the first time, whether perfection was only another word for fear. The journey was short. Exile did not require distance, only separation. Beyond the city's protective field stretched a land of dim light and silent storms. Radiation clouds moved slowly across the surface, glowing faintly in colors no living eye should see for long. The ground was cracked and empty. No structure stood there. No voices sounded. Only the quiet promise of an ending. The vessel descended. Inside her chest, Elira felt something unexpected. Not hope, not fear. Something softer. A small wish that someone, somewhere, might see her not as failure, but as a person. The thought was strange enough to almost feel dangerous. The vessel landed on bare stone. The door opened. Cold air slipped inside like an unseen tide. One guardian spoke the final words required by law, thanking her for the life she had lived and releasing her to balance. The words were beautiful and empty at the same time. Elira stepped down onto the silent ground. The door closed behind her. The vessel lifted without hesitation and disappeared into the pale sky. No one looked back. She stood alone in a world that did not want her. For a long moment, she simply breathed. The air tasted thin and bitter. Faint light from distant storms painted the horizon in shifting colors. Somewhere far away, energy crackled softly, like the universe whispering to itself. This was where forgotten lives ended. Time passed, though she could not measure how much. Her species did not panic in the face of death. They simply grew quiet. Elira walked slowly across the cracked surface, feeling weakness already beginning at the edges of her body. The radiation would take hours, perhaps days. The law preferred slow endings. It allowed reflection. She wondered what reflection was meant to change. As she walked, a memory returned to her. Long ago, when she was very young, she had studied signals from distant stars, patterns of light, bursts of sound, strange mathematics that hinted at minds beyond her world. Her teachers had called such thoughts distractions. Other civilizations were irrelevant. Only survival mattered. But Elira had once imagined meeting someone different, someone who believed life could have meaning beyond function. The memory felt warm for a brief moment, like standing in sunlight that no longer existed. Then something unexpected happened. Far above the silent land, a new light appeared. It was small at first, moving against the dark like a slow-burning star that did not belong. Elira stopped walking. Her people's vessels never returned once. Exile was complete. Nothing came here except storms and endings. The light grew brighter. A shape formed around it, sharp and unfamiliar, smooth metal unlike the silver towers, angles that spoke of design, guided by different thoughts, different needs. The object moved with careful control, not the distant indifference of drifting debris. It was a ship, not of her world. Elira's heart, which had already begun to slow in quiet surrender, gave a sudden unfamiliar beat. Confusion rose inside her, followed by something even stranger. Possibility. High above, inside that approaching vessel, human eyes watched the desolate surface below. Instruments translated unknown signals. Quiet voices filled a room built for exploration, not judgment. Among them stood Commander Nathan Hale. He had spent most of his life traveling between stars, searching not for conquest, but for understanding. Many called such a mission naive. Nathan called it necessary. Humanity had learned, through long and painful history, that survival without compassion eventually destroyed itself. When the sensors first detected Elira's faint distress signal, buried beneath radiation noise, protocol had offered clear instruction. Observe only. Do not interfere with developing civilizations. Do not change what you do not understand. Nathan had listened to the rule. Then he had looked again at the fragile life sign, flickering alone beyond the protective boundary of an advanced city. And he had made a different choice. The ship descended through silent clouds of glowing particles. Energy shields shimmered softly as they pushed aside radiation that would have killed any unprotected being. To the crew, the maneuver felt small. To the history of two civilizations, it was the beginning of something impossible. On the surface, Elira watched the unknown craft settle onto the cracked stone not far from where she stood. Wind from its landing pushed dust outward in gentle waves. Light from its engines painted the empty land in warm gold instead of cold violet. For the first time since her judgment, the world did not feel completely silent. A section of the ship opened. A ramp extended slowly toward the ground. Ira did not move. She did not understand what she was seeing. Her people had taught that nothing existed beyond their perfect order. Yet here was proof of another path descending from the sky itself. Footsteps sounded softly on metal. A single human figure appeared at the top of the ramp, outlined by the warm light of the ship behind him. He wore a simple exploration suit, marked not by symbols of power, but by signs of travel and time. His posture held caution, but also something gentler, something open. Nathan Hale looked across the short distance at the lone alien woman standing in the radiation-scarred silence. He had expected many possible first contacts in his career. He had not expected this. For a moment, neither of them moved. Two lives from different stars, meeting at the edge of one life's ending. Nathan took a slow step forward, careful, respectful, giving her space to retreat if she wished. His translator worked quietly, shaping unknown language into fragile shared meaning. When he spoke, his voice was calm and simple. He did not ask what she was. He did not ask why she was alone. He asked the only question that mattered to him. "Do you need help?" The words crossed the empty land like the first drop of rain after endless drought. Inside Elira, something broke open, something sealed away, long before this day. Not weakness, not despair. Something softer and far more dangerous. Hope. She did not understand these strangers. She did not know their laws, their power, or their intentions. All she knew was that someone had looked at her final moment and chosen not to turn away. Her voice trembled as it formed sound for the first time since exile. Yes, it was a small word, but in that silent, forgotten place between stars, it changed everything. The word she had spoken was small, but its meaning moved through the quiet air like a signal stronger than any machine could send. The human standing before her did not react with shock or fear. He only nodded once, slowly, as if her answer had been the most natural thing in the universe. Commander Nathan Hale took another careful step forward. His suit protected him from the radiation that drifted across the broken land, but his posture showed no barrier between himself and the fragile life in front of him. He kept his hands visible, empty, peaceful. Long years of meeting unknown worlds had taught him that the first moments of contact were never about science. They were about trust. Behind him, the open ramp of the human ship glowed with warm light. Inside waited air that would not burn her lungs, walls that did not judge her worth, and people who had already begun to argue in quiet voices about what should happen next. Elira did not know any of this. She only felt weakness spreading slowly through her body, like cold water rising around her bones. Standing upright required more strength than she had left. The storms in the distance shimmered with silent danger. She understood, with calm clarity, that without help she would not see another full cycle of light. Nathan's translator shaped her fragile language again. His voice remained gentle. "You are safe if you come with us." Safe. The word felt strange. On her world, safety had always been conditional, earned, measured, never freely given. She searched his face for deception, but found only quiet concern, the kind that did not demand anything in return. Her people believed kindness without purpose did not exist, yet this moment stood before her, real as the ground beneath her feet. She tried to take a step toward him. Pain and dizziness rushed through her at once. The horizon tilted. For an instant she thought she was falling into the glowing sky. Nathan moved quickly, but without panic. He reached her just as her strength failed. Instead of grabbing, he supported her weight with careful respect, as if she were something precious rather than broken. The contact was gentle, steady, and completely unfamiliar. No one outside childhood had touched her with care before. Her vision blurred. She felt motion as he guided her toward the ramp. Warm light grew brighter. The bitter taste of the poisoned air began to fade. Then darkness closed softly around her thoughts. When Ira opened her eyes again, the universe had changed. The air was clean, cool, easy to breathe. Soft light filled a quiet room shaped from smooth white panels that reminded her of home, yet felt different in a way she could not name. There was no sound of distant storms, no silent judgment waiting in the walls. For several moments she simply lay still, unsure if this was memory, dream, or the final illusion before death. Then she noticed the figure seated a short distance away. Nathan sat beside a small console, watching readings move across a glowing screen. When he saw her eyes open, he did not rush forward. He only offered a calm, reassuring smile, the kind meant to comfort rather than impress. "You are aboard our ship," he said softly through the translator. "Your body was very weak, but you are stable now." Stable. Another unfamiliar mercy. Elira slowly pushed herself upright. No restraints held her. No guards watched from the corners. She was free to move, even here among strangers from another star. Confusion mixed with caution inside her. "Why?" she asked quietly. Nathan understood the question beneath the word. Why save someone already rejected? Why risk interference? Why care? He considered giving a long explanation about human law, exploration ethics, and the long history that had shaped his people. But none of those felt true enough for this moment. "Because you asked for help," he answered simply. Nothing in her life had prepared her for that response. Silence settled gently between them, but it was not the heavy silence of exile. It felt open, like space waiting to be filled with something new. After a time, the door behind Nathan slid open. 2 other humans entered, moving with quiet curiosity. One carried a small medical scanner. The other held a container, releasing the faint smell of something warm and unfamiliar. They spoke softly to Nathan in their own language, voices calm but uncertain. Irila could not understand the words, yet she sensed the meaning. Debate, concern, wonder. She realized then that her presence here was not simple. These people had rules too. Saving her might carry consequences she could not see. The human with the scanner approached slowly and knelt beside her, careful to remain within her sight. The device hummed with gentle light as it checked her condition. No pain followed, only warmth. "Recovery is progressing," the human said to Nathan. "Radiation damage was severe, but repair systems are working." Repair, recovery. Words of continuation instead of ending. The second human offered the container. Inside was a clear liquid, glowing faintly blue. Nathan looked to Elira. "This will help your strength," he explained. "Only if you choose. Only if you choose." Choice had never been part of survival on her world. The idea felt almost too large to understand. Still, she accepted the container with unsteady hands and tasted the liquid. Sweetness spread across her tongue, followed by gentle energy moving through her weakened body. Warmth reached places inside her that had been cold for a very long time. Days passed aboard the human vessel, though Elira struggled at first to measure time without the familiar rhythms of her home. No one forced her into isolation. No one spoke of judgment. Instead, she was given a quiet room, soft clothing, and the simple freedom to walk the corridors when she felt strong enough. Everywhere she went, she noticed differences. Humans spoke to one another as equals, even when ranks were different. Laughter appeared in unexpected places. Mistakes were met with patience instead of shame. Work mattered, but so did rest, so did music, conversation, and long moments of looking out at the stars, for no reason except wonder. Worth here was not tied to birth. The realization frightened her almost as much as exile had. Nathan visited often, never staying too long, never making her feel observed. Sometimes he brought images of Earth, vast oceans moving under open sky, forests filled with living sound, cities bright with countless lives choosing their own paths. He explained slowly, using simple words, allowing her to ask questions when she was ready. She learned that humans formed families not only through children, but through promise, loyalty, and love freely given. Some families shared blood, Others shared only choice. Both were real. The idea settled deep inside her, quiet and powerful. Yet peace did not last without shadow. Far across the stars, instruments on her homeworld had detected something impossible. A signal once marked for extinction had not faded. Unknown energy surrounded it. Foreign technology, foreign intent, interference. To her people, this was not rescue. It was contamination. A decision formed quickly, shaped by ancient fear disguised as order. A retrieval fleet was prepared, silent and precise, not for war, but for correction. Balance must be restored. Tradition must remain unbroken. The fleet entered the darkness between stars, moving toward the single human vessel that had chosen compassion over distance. Aboard that vessel, Elira stood beside a wide observation window, looking into endless night. She felt stronger now, yet uncertainty remained. She did not know what future waited for her among humans. She only knew she was still alive to wonder. Nathan joined her quietly. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, watching the distant light of a nebula unfold like color in water. "Yes," she whispered. "It is very large." He smiled gently. "Large enough for more than one way to live." She held those words carefully, afraid they might disappear. In another chamber of the ship, an alarm began to sound. Soft at first, then rising with urgent meaning. Officers turned toward glowing screens. New signals had appeared at the edge of detection range. Multiple vessels, design unknown to human records, moving directly toward them. The quiet days of healing were ending. Something from Elira's past was coming through the dark, carrying the weight of laws that had already decided her fate once before. She did not hear the alarm yet. She still stood beside the window, looking at stars that suddenly felt fragile. Nathan received the message through his communicator. His expression changed only slightly, but the calm in his eyes grew deeper, more focused. A choice was approaching, one that could not be avoided. He looked at Elira, no longer a dying stranger on broken ground, but a living person standing in borrowed starlight, beginning to believe she might belong somewhere. Very softly, so only she could hear, he said, "Whatever happens next, you won't face it alone." For the first time since childhood, she believed someone might be telling the truth. Space around the human vessel had always felt calm, like an endless ocean without waves. Now that calm was changing. Quiet signals moved through the dark, too organized to be natural, too precise to ignore. On the command deck, soft lights shifted from blue to amber as new readings appeared across the screens. Multiple ships were approaching. They moved in perfect formation, silent and controlled, carrying the unmistakable design of Elira's people. Smooth silver surfaces reflected distant starlight like cold mirrors. Their engines gave off almost no visible glow, as if even motion itself obeyed strict law. To the human crew, the sight was beautiful and troubling at the same time. Commander Nathan Hale stood at the center of the deck, hands resting lightly behind his back. He did not raise his voice or rush his orders. Calm had always been his way of protecting others from fear, but inside, his thoughts were moving quickly. First contact was never simple. Behind him, officers worked with careful focus. Translators prepared unknown languages. Defense systems powered quietly, not to threaten but to ensure survival if peace failed. Medical teams waited in case the fragile guest they had rescued became the center of something much larger than any of them expected. Nathan looked once toward the corridor that led to the observation chamber. Elira was still there, unaware that her past had already found her again. Moments later, the soft alarm finally reached the quiet hall where she stood beside the wide window. The sound was gentle, nothing like the harsh warning tones used by her own world, yet it carried clear meaning. Something important was happening. She felt a slow tightening inside her chest. Nathan entered the chamber soon after. He did not hide the truth behind polite silence. "Ships from your world are here," he said carefully. "They are requesting communication." The words felt heavy in the air between them. Ira closed her eyes for a brief moment. She had known peace could not last forever. Tradition did not forget. Law did not forget. Her rescue, which had felt like a quiet miracle, now stood on the edge of becoming a conflict between stars. "They will ask for me," she said softly.
Yes, they will say I must return. Nathan did not answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer to the window, standing beside her rather than in front of her.
The two of them looked out at the distant silver lights growing slowly larger. "You don't have to decide anything alone," he said. Alone. The word had defined her entire life, until now. Hearing its opposite still felt unreal. On the command deck, the first message from the alien fleet arrived. It carried precise structure, formal tone, and absolute certainty. Their language flowed through human translators, reshaping into clear meaning. The message did not include greeting. It did not include gratitude for the rescue of one of their own. It contained only declaration. The individual designated Elira had been lawfully exiled. Her removal from planetary boundary by foreign power was an act of cultural violation. She must be returned immediately to restore balance. Failure to comply would result in enforced correction. Silence followed the translation. Some human officers felt anger rise at the coldness of the demand. Others felt fear at the quiet confidence behind it. A few simply felt sadness that any civilization could measure life so narrowly. Nathan felt all of these things, but above them, he felt responsibility. "Open a channel," he said calmly. Stars filled the main screen as connection formed between the two civilizations. Shapes of alien figures appeared, tall and still, their expressions controlled by generations of discipline. At their center stood a leader marked by subtle symbols of authority. Nathan met their gaze without hostility. "I am Commander Nathan Hale of the United Earth Exploration Fleet," he said. "The individual you speak of requested help. We responded to preserve life." The alien leader's voice came smooth and emotionless through translation. "You interfered with lawful conclusion. We prevented a death. Death was required for balance." Nathan paused, choosing words with care. Not weak words, not angry words. True words. "Among humans," he said quietly, "balance does not require abandoning someone who wishes to live." The alien figures remained perfectly still, yet tension seemed to gather in the silence around them. "Your philosophy is irrelevant to our survival," the leader replied. "Return the exile." Nathan could feel every eye on the command deck watching him. One decision here could begin peace, or something far worse. Before he could answer, a soft voice spoke from behind him. "Wait." Elira had entered the deck. No one had stopped her. No one had tried. She walked slowly forward, strength steady but fragile, until she stood beside Nathan facing the image of her own people for the first time since exile. For a moment, no one in either fleet moved. To the alien leaders, she should have been gone from existence. To the human crew, she had become someone worth protecting. To herself, she was no longer certain what she was. The alien leader spoke first. "You were released. Your return is not permitted." Elira felt the old weight of obedience press against her thoughts. All her life, she had followed without question. Silence had always been safer than voice, but she remembered warm air in a quiet room, gentle hands that did not judge, a simple question asked on a broken world. "Do you need help?" Something inside her stood up for the first time. "I asked to live," she said. The words trembled, but they did not break. Murmurs moved through the human crew. Even the alien figures seemed to shift slightly, as if unused to hearing defiance shaped so softly. "Your request was irrelevant," the leader answered. Elira looked at Nathan briefly. He did not speak. He did not guide her. He only stood beside her, offering silent strength without control. Choice. This was what choice felt like. She faced her people again. "If survival requires ending those who are different," she said slowly, "then survival is already broken." No one on the command deck breathed. Across the void, alien silence deepened into something uncertain. Not agreement, not surrender, but the first thin crack in perfect certainty. The leader's voice returned, quieter than before. "You have been altered by foreign influence." "Yes," Elira said. "I have learned another way to see life. Your thinking threatens order." She felt fear then, real and sharp. Speaking these truths could destroy any chance of peace, but hiding them would destroy something inside her that had only just begun to exist. "Order without compassion is only quiet cruelty," she whispered. The words hung in space between two civilizations. Time seemed to stop. Human defense systems waited in silent readiness. Alien ships held perfect formation, power building unseen. One fragile conversation, balanced on the edge of history. Nathan finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying far beyond the room. "We are not your enemies," he said, "but we will not surrender someone who chooses to live. No threat, no anger. Only certainty." For the first time since arriving, the alien leader did not answer immediately. Data flowed through their fleet. Probabilities shifted. Outcomes once simple became complex. Because of one unwanted life. Minutes passed like slow heartbeats. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of weapons, a new signal emerged from the alien ships, directed not at humans, but at Elira herself. Deep scans of her biology began, more detailed than any performed before exile. Human sensors detected the process, but did not interfere. Nathan frowned slightly. What are they doing? Elira felt a strange warmth move through her body as invisible waves passed over her. Not painful, not harmful, searching. The scan ended. Silence followed. When the alien leader spoke again, their voice carried the first hint of something almost human. Previous judgment may contain error. Shock moved across the human deck. Elira's breath caught. "Your biology is not void," the leader continued slowly. "It is incompatible with homeworld environment. Reproduction remains statistically possible under alternate conditions." The meaning unfolded like sunrise. She had never been broken, only different. Tears, an instinct her species had nearly forgotten, filled her eyes without permission. On the command deck, several humans quietly looked away to give her privacy in the middle of history. The universe had just changed direction because someone chose kindness over distance. And in the deep silence between stars, two civilizations stood facing a truth neither had expected. One life, once thrown away, had become the reason everything might change. Between the ships. Spoke the words continued to echo inside Elira's mind, soft but powerful, like light slowly filling a dark room. She had never been broken. All her life she had carried the quiet weight of failure, believing her existence was a mistake that needed to be erased. Every memory of judgment, every cold look, every moment of isolation had been built on something that was not true. Different conditions. Different environment. A possibility that had never been allowed to exist. Her knees felt weak, not from sickness this time, but from the sudden release of pain she had carried for so long. She did not fall because Nathan's steady presence remained beside her, calm and grounded like a quiet anchor in deep water. Around them, the human command deck stayed silent out of respect. No one rushed to celebrate. No one spoke loudly. They understood that some moments were too important for noise. Across the stars, the alien fleet also remained still. Perfect order had been shaken by a simple discovery. A law followed for generations now stood uncertain: balance, purity, and survival. Ideas that once felt unbreakable suddenly required questioning. The alien leader finally spoke again, and this time the voice carried something unfamiliar. Not warmth, not yet, but hesitation. Previous conclusion was based on incomplete data, the leader said. Correction is required. For Alira, those words felt heavier than any sentence of exile. Correction meant her life had been shaped by error. It meant the suffering of many others like her might also have been unnecessary. A quiet sadness touched the hope growing inside her. Nathan listened carefully. He had seen this moment many times in human history. The painful instant when a society first realized it had been wrong. Change never arrived gently, but it could arrive. What happens now? He asked. The question was simple, but it carried the future of more than one world. The alien leader did not answer immediately. Data moved silently between their ships. Calculations measured risk, tradition, and the unknown influence of humanity. For the first time, certainty no longer guided every decision. Finally, the reply came. The individual designated Alira may choose. The command deck seemed to hold its breath. Choice, once denied completely, was now being offered by the very civilization that had taken it away. The moment felt fragile, as if one wrong word could cause it to disappear. Alira's heart beat slowly, deeply. She looked at the distant image of her people, familiar and strange at the same time. Then she turned slightly and looked at the humans beside her, the ones who had saved her without asking for reason or reward. Two paths stood open before her. One was the world she had always known. The other was the world that had chosen her when she had nothing left. For a long time, she said nothing. She allowed herself to truly feel the weight of living, not just surviving. Fear was still there, but it no longer ruled her. Something stronger had grown in its place. Hope, yes, but also understanding. She stepped forward, not toward the screen, not toward the past, but simply into her own voice. I will not return as I was, she said softly. But I do not wish to be separated from my people forever. The alien leader watched her with careful stillness. Clarify. Alira gathered courage from the quiet strength around her. I want to live where choice exists, she continued. I want to learn from humans and help my world learn also, not through force, through understanding. Her words were gentle, yet they carried the shape of something new, something neither civilization had fully imagined. A bridge. Silence followed again, but this silence felt different. It was no longer empty. It was thinking. Nathan felt a quiet pride, though he kept it hidden. This decision was hers alone. That was what made it meaningful. At last, the alien leader spoke. Proposal... acceptable for continued observation and exchange. Relief moved softly through the human crew, like air returning after being held too long. No weapons fired. No orders for battle came. History had chosen a quieter path. The alien fleet slowly powered down its weapon systems, visible even across the dark distance. In response, the human ship did the same. Two sides that could have become enemies instead stood in cautious peace. For Alira, the moment felt unreal. She had walked to the edge of death and somehow arrived at the beginning of something larger than herself. Days turned into weeks as careful communication began between the two civilizations. Scientists shared knowledge step by step. Linguists built clearer translation. Philosophers, human and alien alike, asked difficult questions about worth, survival, and compassion. Nothing changed quickly, but change had begun, and that alone was powerful. Elira remained aboard the human vessel by her own choice. No longer a rescued exile, she became something new, a voice between worlds. She studied human history, learning how often they had failed and how stubbornly they had tried again. She shared stories of her own people, not only their harsh laws but also their quiet beauty, their long memory, their deep desire to survive. Understanding grew slowly, like a seed unsure of sunlight. Through it all, Nathan never treated her as fragile or special. He treated her as family in the simple human way, by trusting her, listening to her, and sometimes sitting in comfortable silence while watching the stars. One evening, as the ship drifted peacefully between two meeting points of the fleets, Elira stood beside him at the observation window once more. "The universe feels different now," she said. "It's the same universe," Nathan replied gently, "but maybe we're seeing more of it." She considered that, then asked the question that had quietly lived inside her for many days. "Why did you really save me?" Nathan smiled faintly, eyes still on the distant light. "Because someone once saved us," he said, "long ago in our own history, and if kindness stops with one generation, it disappears." Elira felt warmth spread through her chest, deeper than before. Whoa! Not the warmth of rescue, the warmth of belonging. Time continued forward, as it always did. Months later, a small shared station was built in neutral space, designed by both species together. It was not perfect, nothing truly new ever was, but humans and aliens walked the same halls, spoke the same slowly growing language, and discovered that fear became smaller when faced side by side. Elira traveled often between the station and the human ship, learning, teaching, listening. Her name, once spoken only with disappointment, began to carry a different meaning among her people. Not failure. Beginning. On a quiet day filled with soft starlight, a simple human ceremony took place aboard the exploration vessel. It was not political, not official, just personal. But Nathan stood with a small group of crew members who had become close to Elira. No uniforms of rank, only the calm presence of chosen family. He spoke a few quiet words about journeys, about second chances, about how family could be formed not only by birth, but by promise. Then he offered Elira a place among them, not as guest, not as responsibility, but as one of their own. She understood the meaning even before the translator finished. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they felt light instead of heavy. "I choose this," she whispered. And in that simple choice, something invisible yet powerful settled into place. Not ownership, not rescue, belonging. Years later, travelers crossing that region of space would see something that had never existed before. Human and alien ships, moving together. Not in perfect order, not without disagreement, but in shared purpose. On one distant world, laws slowly changed to protect lives once cast aside. On another blue world, children learned that the first bridge between stars began with saving a single stranger. And sometimes, in the quiet hours between duties, Elira would stand beneath an open sky, whether Earth's blue or her own world's silver, and remember the moment a simple question changed everything. Do you need help? The universe was still vast, still uncertain, still filled with unknown paths. But now, it was also a place where one unwanted life had proven a gentle, stubborn truth strong enough to cross the stars. No one is truly worthless once someone chooses to care.